17 SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals, have been set by UN member nations. They range from no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, as well as climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice and strong institutions, to partnerships for the goals. Each and every one of those goals is a feat in itself. It is an urgent call for action by all countries developed or developing in a global partnership. And to be achieved, each country must adhere to them on the national level in order to move on to secure their implementation on the global scale. The key is in securing partnership on all levels, and this means public and private, local and global. Good evening. You're watching the Business Insider here on Nile TV International, and I'm Ayman Salah. Our weekly program tackles events affecting economies and business, and we aim to bring you the inside story. Welcome back to the Business Insider. We start with the first news item for the day. It is EDF Renewables that will build a $3 billion facility to produce green fuel for ships alongside the local firm and the Sovereign Fund for Egypt, known as the SFE. EMEA Power, for its part, will partner with SFE and other government agencies to establish a facility to produce green ammonia. A consortium of Emirati renewable energy company Masdar and a local utilities one will also build green hydrogen plants that can produce up to 480,000 tons of green hydrogen a year. The second news item for the week is that a U.S. conglomerate is looking to invest around $200 million in petrochemicals and the production of green fuels for aircraft in Egypt. The company's North Africa head Khalid Hashim said in a meeting with Oil Minister Tariq El Mullah that the country can become a pivotal center linking Europe and the Middle East in green fuel projects to supply ships and produce hydrogen and ammonia. Honeywell is eyeing a bigger green footprint in Egypt. The company wants to increase its role in Egypt's petroleum sector and take part in strategic projects, with a particular interest in green projects, as it seeks to provide technology including carbon capture and storage and contribute to climate-friendly initiatives ahead of COP27, which is taking place in Sharm el-Sheikh this November. The company has been working on several high-profile projects in Egypt over the past few years, including implementing the new capital smart city management system. We'll be back. Welcome back to the Business Insider. Tonight we are celebrating Eid al-Fitr following the holy fasting month of Ramadan. And our topic for tonight is green growth and the challenges faced by the world to achieve the development agenda. Let's watch this report and start our discussion.
20 years after the first Rio summit, the world continues to face a twin challenge: expanding economic opportunities for all in the context of a growing global population and addressing environmental pressures that, if left unaddressed, could undermine our ability to seize these opportunities. Green growth is where these two challenges meet, and it is about exploiting the opportunities to realize the two together. According to the OECD, green growth means fostering economic growth and development while ensuring that natural assets continue to provide the resources and environmental services on which our well-being relies. To do this, it must catalyze investment and innovation, which will underpin sustained growth and give rise to new economic opportunities. Green growth is not a replacement for sustainable development. Rather, it provides a practical and flexible approach for achieving concrete, measurable progress across its economic and environmental pillars, while taking full account of the social consequences of greening the growth dynamic of economies. The focus of green growth strategies is ensuring that natural assets can deliver their full economic potential on a sustainable basis. That potential includes the provision of critical life support services, clean air and water, and the resilient biodiversity needed to support food production and human health. Natural assets are not infinitely sustainable, and green growth policies take account of that. A green growth strategy was delivered in a bid to serve as a useful tool for expanding economic growth and job creation through more sustainable use of natural resources, efficiencies in the use of energy, and valuation of ecosystem services. The strategy recognizes that focusing on GDP as the main measure of economic progress generally overlooks the contribution of natural assets to wealth, health, and well-being. They therefore need to rely on a broader range of measures of progress encompassing the quality and composition of growth and how this affects people's wealth and welfare.
Welcome back to the Business Insider. So green growth and the challenges faced throughout the development process is our topic tonight. With us on the line is Dr. Yomn Hamaki. She is the economics professor at Ain Shams University. A pleasure to have you with us on the line tonight, especially on such a day. Happy Eid to you and your loved ones.
Thank you very much, and to you too, and to all Muslims all over the world.
Dr. Yomn, the Minister of Planning's participation in the 2022 ECOSOC Forum on Financing for Development. Let's start with that. There is a report that has been issued, and it serves as the input for the forum that took place. And the Minister of Planning participated in. What are the main pillars of the report that bases the discussion?
Actually, the report is mentioning to how extent Egypt has exerted efforts during the last period in order to achieve sustainable development. Sustainable development as the 17 goals actually have been mainstreamed into the national plan and the vision of Egypt 2030.
The 17 SDGs, you mean?
No, we have a vision for Egypt 2030, which means that in this vision, the 17 goals of sustainable development should be mainstreamed regarding all aspects of life, in which, like for energy, efforts have been done to move towards renewable energy. We have the measure or the big project of Bemban to generate electricity, from sun, and this is a huge, project in which Egypt is paving the way towards, enhancing capabilities towards more renewable energy, and all the industries and the capacity building towards enhancing, the position of Egypt worldwide of generating electricity from renewable sources. So this is quite important. Another, very ambitious program, introducing electric cars into Egypt, which we have started actually to enhance the capability of Egypt to introduce cars electricity. And from here, it comes that all these efforts have been done during the last period towards, presenting Egypt as a very important player in the African continent from one perspective, and in the Middle East from another, and within Arab countries to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals.
Right. The forum stresses on financing for development, and as you know also COP27, which is due to take place in November, Egypt is focusing on financing the African continent in order to implement the goals of preserving the environment and transforming into the green economy. What are the challenges facing the financing needs?
Actually, this is a major challenge confronting COP27, and this topic has been discussed in COP26, and nowadays we have several latest studies to specify what is the financial gap for developing countries in order to address sustainable development goals, and these studies prove that the financial gap is arriving to more than $7 trillion, which means that the financial gap is huge. We all know that the African continent and the Middle East, most of these countries, they are going to be affected severely by the impact of climate change, despite that these countries, they haven't participated actually in the main reason for such a problem. And from here it comes that developed countries should, take this into consideration and support developing countries. If we add another challenge like COVID-19, and nowadays we have the Russian-Ukrainian war, all these are adding more challenges towards, food security for the African continent, taking into consideration that this continent is suffering from poverty to a large extent, from, the capability, even if we analyze to how extent the African continent has succeeded to achieve the Millennium Development Goals, we are going to find that climate change had affected negatively and severely the capability of the continent to achieve the Millennium Development Goals. And from here it comes still, the continent is suffering from poverty, suffering from the dependence on raw materials and lack of industrialization, which is representing severe challenge towards finding opportunities for youth. So unemployment of youth and of women, one of the, the largest rate of unemployment specifically among youth and among women is existing in the African continent. So these challenges confronting the African continent, actually, if we put with it the challenges from the climate change, we can find out to how extent the continent in a risk if they are not having to get financial support and the financial requirements in order to achieve sustainable development goals.
One of the 17 SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals, the last of which is partnerships for the goals, partnerships to achieve the goals. Do you see that there is a will to partner in order to achieve the 17 SDGs, the 16 SDGs other than partnership?
Actually, I have been responsible in Shura Council, in the Egyptian Shura Council, for monitoring the financial aid coming from developed countries into Egypt, and to how extent Egypt has benefited from such financial aid from donors and international organizations. And what I'm talking about can be extended towards several experiences in the African continent. And these studies, empirical studies and experiences prove that we still have severe challenges towards our capability to benefit on the best way from financial support and aid coming, and we need a results-based management, and we need monitoring, a very strong system of monitoring and evaluation towards allocating, resources to the main challenges confronting the capability of the African continent to achieve sustainable development goals. And from here comes the importance of your question. Nowadays, the continent is moving towards a better situation regarding building human resources. Egypt is playing a significant role towards building capabilities of youth, and we have noticed to how extent African youth have been introduced toward youth forums that have been, done in Egypt for last period, and to how extent African youth have been mainstreamed into our youth forum. And we are taking into account, how to work in a collective way to benefit from the capability of youth, with taking gender perspectives into consideration. All these aspects, Egypt is working quite hard to build capabilities and to try to have action plans to achieve the vision of 2063 of the African continent. So we are moving forward, and we are assuming as Egypt our responsibilities towards the continent, and we have our action plans in cooperation with African continent and build on win-win situations so that we can maximize our benefit from COP27.
The ECOSOC forum on financing for development had certain topics. One of them is domestic public resources, the other domestic and international private business and finance, another is international development cooperation, international trade as an engine for development, debt and debt sustainability, addressing systemic issues and cross-cutting issues. I'm interested in two of those. One is the development cooperation. You were focusing on the cooperation that Egypt received when you were in Shura Council, and you followed on that file. The other is debt and debt sustainability. The development cooperation here, when you talk about a gap, a $7 trillion gap, this rings many bells, especially when you have those suffering from the lack of resources are countries that are in debt, if you will. So with the debt, is it feasible to implement the development goals?
Actually, the debt can be considered as one of the most important challenges confronting the African continent. And I believe that, as I mentioned, that due to COVID-19 and then the Ukrainian war, Ukraine-Russian war, I believe this added to the severity of the problem of external debt for the African continent, specifically poor countries in African continent. And from here it comes that some international organizations nowadays are, trying to discuss that matter and to how extent they can alleviate the burden of such external debt. And definitely, this external debt is going to affect seriously the capability of African continent to achieve the SDGs. Another point regarding your question is that the nexus among three important pillars are quite important to be taken into consideration when we talk about how to achieve sustainable development, which are number one, technology, because you cannot achieve sustainable development without transfer of technology, enhancing your capability in R&D and training and so on, building capabilities. So these are quite important because when you see all, how to address climate change, it's all depending on technology. This is an essential pillar that we have to develop our capabilities as African continent on it. So this is the first pillar. The second pillar is the participation of the private sector, because all the time you can see that specifically for developing countries, the problem for green economy is that how to attract the private sector and to work on economic way to enhance the profitability of green projects and to encourage private sector to be introduced so that you can enhance the economic part of the three dimensions of sustainable development to have a better result. So this is another nexus which we have to work on it as African continent so that we can open more opportunities for green projects and for generating opportunities of job for youth in green projects. The third one is building human capabilities, which means that this is quite important because as you know, that most of human resources in the continent are still lacking enough skills, capabilities, and from here it comes the importance of upgrading skills and building capabilities. And building capabilities is not by good education and training, and you can add to that addressing the main diseases, improving the health standards of people in the continent. All these are pillars, very important pillars towards achieving sustainable development goals. This is what Egypt is trying actually to concentrate on and to, cooperate with the African continent. Nowadays, we are moving towards a free trade area among all African countries. Like you mentioned, international trade can play a significant role since we can intra-trade among the continent may open opportunities for the private sector, not only for large projects, but for medium and small enterprises too, which is a very important part of, enhancing income and improving, the standard of living for most African people in the continent.
A final question for Dr. Yomn Hamaki, the professor of economics at Ain Shams University. Economic reform and growth without the active and growing investments of the private sector, is it possible?
Unfortunately, it's not possible according to most experiences. You cannot rely on government because actually all experiences of having government as investor have proved a failure of the government to manage investment. So the private sector is should dominate the scene regarding, enhancing investment and building capabilities and enlarging the size of the economy. Because,
what should be the role of the government?
The role of the government is to make an enabling environment, to encourage the private sector and to sustain their goals and to, guarantee, the efficiency of the market and to address monopoly and all other, factors that may affect negatively the environment of investment.
Dr. Yomn Hamaki, Professor of Economics at Ain Shams University, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much, and once again, happy Eid.
Thank you for it.
We'll take a break, and when we come back, Dr. Abdel Fattah Badr, Professor of Science at Hilwan University, will be talking to us about green growth. Don't go away.